I'm back with another video after God knows how long it's been since my last one, and I'm talking about the new Superman movie. Going into this movie, regardless of my opinion or anything like that, this movie had a lot of controversy behind it, mainly from the Snyder cultists and things like that. Like, there's a lot of drama that happened leading up to the release of this movie, and look, with the first teasers and stuff, I wasn't super excited for. I was excited for a new Superman movie and hoping for it to be good. And then over time, I slowly got more and more excited for this movie. And with all of that happening, what did I think of the movie? Since I've seen it twice now, and I really let myself kind of sit back and think about the movie and really gather my thoughts together for an opinion. But what did I think? I loved it. Yeah, I loved it, and it gave me everything that I wanted out of a Superman movie. But I should give a quick little rundown about this movie because some people might not have seen it. It's only been out for a week and I've managed to see it twice in that time. But basically, this movie has Superman basically in a few years into him being Superman, where he gets defeated for the first time and he starts to learn about his past a bit more as he realizes that things weren't what he seemed, and where he really has to find out what it means to be Superman and what it means to him. Obviously, along the way, we have other characters that we interact with in the movie, such as Lois Lane and everyone on the Daily Planet, as well as villains like Lex and Ultraman, and even like the Engineer as well. But even other heroes, obviously, that are shown in the trailers, like Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl. And hey, even throw in Crypto the Superdog as well, which, very unique, but I like the movie because they throw in a character like Crypto. And with that being said, and there's so many characters that I mentioned there, I feel like they balanced each character out really fucking well in this movie. There are a lot of characters, and that was one of my biggest worries coming into this movie with all the trailers and everything. I feel like, okay, there might be too much going on, too many characters with too many subplots, but no, I really didn't feel that. I felt like all the characters were used for the main plot, and they all had their time to shine, especially characters like Mr. Terrific and Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. With that, the main cast are fantastic, especially standouts like Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and Edi, I don't even want to try and pronounce his last name, as Mr. Terrific. With that though, I feel like there's some characters that could have had a little bit more focus. Like Hawkgirl kind of got shafted out of the 3 Justice Gang members, and also with the Daily Planet characters like Perry White, and things like that, besides from Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane. I feel like other characters like Perry White and things like that could have gotten a bit more focus, but I wasn't bothered by it. They got enough time in the movie to where we got to understand them as characters. But I know that they're doing another Superman movie, and I do hope that they focus on those characters a bit more, and we get a bit more character development out of them, we get to understand the characters more, because from what I've seen so far in this movie, obviously as the characters go, I like it. I like their characters, they're very well written. But there's still other characters like Crypto, and even, yeah, with the dog character being one of the main characters, what did I think about having Crypto in this movie? I really liked Crypto, and I felt like the character was used really well in the movie. It wasn't used too much or too little. There was a good balance of using that character where it doesn't show up in every scene, but doesn't show up in like 1 or 2 scenes either. The dog is still prevalent in the plot of the movie and has an impact on what's going on throughout the whole movie. And it's great. It's great that they do that, because the character like Crypto is seen as kind of a joke, but they use the character in this movie very well to where without Crypto, the plot of the movie wouldn't go the way it does. Kind of tying in with having a lot of characters and everything like that, I felt like the pacing in this movie was perfect. It was only just over 2 hours in length, including credits, and nothing dragged out, nothing felt too rushed. I felt like everything went by the way I wanted it to, as like pacing goes. Nothing gets over-focused or under-focused in my opinion. Besides like a few characters could use a little bit more, but even then, like Hawkgirl, as I mentioned before, she's going to show up in Peacemaker, which comes out next month. And then I imagine that the Daily Planet, like most of the people at Daily Planet, will show up more in the sequel, which seems to be confirmed so far. Since I really like the pacing of the movie and how things flowed throughout this movie, how scenes flowed from one to another, I really like the overall tone of this movie. It doesn't go for a Zack Snyder approach, which, yes, you could obviously get that from the trailers, but watching the movie itself, you really get that, like, campy, corny style Superman in a way, which is really good because that's what I think the character is. Like, Obviously, I've talked about Superman the Animated Series. Watch that video in the description if you want to. I've talked about things like that where the character is a bit more campy and corny and lighthearted. And I feel like this movie does that really, really well. And if I was to compare this movie to anything, I feel like it's a Justice League Unlimited episode, basically as a Superman movie, with Superman being the main character and other characters popping up on the side. Which is a good thing, because it really has that charm. It feels like a real comic book movie instead of something very realistic and serious with like what we got with the Zack Snyder movies. I don't hate Man of Steel, by the way, while I'm saying that. I actually like the movie. There's some things I don't like, but I like the movie overall. It's just, as a Superman movie, this is much better. Getting back into the tone, it really shines when you get to near the end of the movie, where Superman's making these speeches that you would see in like Superman the Animated Series and all the DCAU stuff that I grew up watching. And it just feels so awesome to see that again. And it's just, honestly, it's just like, I'm just sitting there, I'm just going, wow, I love this. It's one of those things, you're just gonna sit there and you're just watching it in your mind, you're thinking like, I love this. It's one of those things. On top of that, since this movie is more of a light-hearted tone, I felt like the humor was actually done really well. Even though I feel like a lot of people were worried that James Gunn's humor style was going to be all over this movie, and not really. There's a few little jokes that are kind of James Gunn style, but I feel like most of the jokes in the movie hit. There were a couple of misses, there were a couple of just like, yeah, okay. But with those jokes, they kind of just brushed it aside and there was something else going on. So even if a joke didn't really hit, it wouldn't linger on at all. They're like, okay, something else is going on. Don't have to worry about that joke anymore. Which was a good thing, because it surprisingly, it was one of those things where even though a joke happened, there's other stuff going on around the joke to where the joke isn't always the focus. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. And those jokes that missed, most of the time, it wasn't really the main focus because there's other things going on at that time. But since I liked the humor in the movie, because there were some jokes that I actually laughed at, there are some serious moments in this movie too that really, really work. And I imagine you would have seen some of them pop up on Twitter and things like that. But there's a few moments in this movie, especially like when Clark goes to visit his parents in the middle of the movie. I loved that stuff. That stuff where he was talking to like Ma and Pa Ken. Especially there's a moment where he's talking to his dad outside. And that moment is something special, man. Like, there's moments like that where they really connect and you really feel that. And it's just a great feeling to see that happen, because it just feels so natural the way this movie conveys those emotions and really gets across characters' feelings to each other. But anyways, getting away from the tone and things like that, the action is actually really good in this movie. There's like one or two shots in the action scenes, especially the first scene against the Hammer of Barovia, where it looks a bit janky, but people like to complain about those on Twitter. I do see that quite a bit. But those shots, there's one shot in particular that pops up. It's not even on the screen for it's not even on the screen for a second. It's on for less than a second. So you've really got to nitpick to complain about something like that, where it's one shot out of many shots in an action scene that doesn't look great. Because the rest of it looks really good. The CGI, the action coordination, everything looks really good. And the only thing I can think of that would potentially be a negative is that they could have added a bit more of James Gunn's style to it a little bit, but that doesn't take it away from me, because that doesn't take anything away from me, because I like how this movie looks. It's very bright, it's very colourful, and there's a lot going on in a good way, and it just works for me, man. There's a lot of goofy stuff going on in the action scenes, especially when Superman's saving people. There's that big like kaiju's going on in the city. There's a lot of cheesy stuff going on in that, and there's like, yeah, saving people while the kaiju's going on. And even though it's corny, I love it. It's stuff that just really shows how much Superman cares about people in general. And this movie conveys that super well. Okay, I'm only going to talk about spoilers for a little bit. So this is your spoiler warning. There will be a time code when I finish this where I just wrap it up and conclude everything. Because I don't really have too much else to say about the movie, but there's only a few things I want to mention in spoilers. So I'm going into that in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's get into the first spoiler, which they changed Superman's origin story a little bit. So, as I was mentioning, where Superman kind of has to discover what it means to be Superman to himself, and where his morals are shaken up and everything like that, and he realizes what it means to be Superman and things like that. That has to do with his backstory with his Krypton parents, with Jor-El and whatever. Basically, his parents, which Jor-El's played by Bradley Cooper, which is kind of funny. But basically, there was footage of his parents' message as he was being sent to Earth, and it's all good and well. It's like, okay, you're here to serve the people of Earth and whatever, and to basically be a hero to them, a protector for them and whatever. And then half of it's cut off. So it's like a intermission. It's a message that's been intercepted. It's like, it's been stuffed up. The footage has been stuffed up halfway through. So he doesn't know the rest of it. And then during the movie, Lex and the engineer and everything break into the Fortress of Solitude, and they basically recover the rest of the footage. And they find out that his parents sent him to Earth to basically take over the planet. And that's used as the main plot of the main part of the movie, of the plot, where that's like Lex uses it obviously because apparently it's not edited, and the movie insists on that. It doesn't bait and switch to where Lex edited it or anything like that. It insists on the fact that that footage that he showed to the world is real, which is interesting. Some people like it, some people don't. I feel like this is a Zack Snyder's Watchmen kind of situation for me, where, like, say, Zack Snyder's Watchmen, the ending doesn't work for some people, but it works for that movie. This backstory change is one thing where I feel like it works for the movie. It is something different for the character, and usually in every media, it's like, yeah, okay, his parents were good people, and he sent him to Earth to do good for Earth and all that. But this time around, they change it. And look, I believe that they'll potentially do something where you find out that Lex changed the backstory. I hope they don't do that. I hope they stick to their guns here and stay with this backstory, because I feel like it really works for the movie, because throughout the movie, he basically finds out that, like, he basically realizes that, okay, he doesn't have to do what his Krypton parents wanted him to do. And then by the end of the movie, basically doesn't worry about the message. He gets rid of that message, and then instead shows footage of him growing up in Kansas with his parents instead of that message. And it basically makes him realize, okay, like, it's just one of those things where his morals change. He's like, yeah, okay. Well, it doesn't really change, but it's more one of those things where he's like, okay, I obviously like my parents and I respect them, and I'm happy that they helped me, and they've helped me all my life. So he uses them as inspiration for being Superman, things like that. And I think that's an excellent change for this movie, because it really works in this movie. If they didn't really do anything like that and fit it to the tone of the movie and the main theme of the movie, I don't think it would work so much. But for me, where it ties into the main, like, plot of the movie and the main themes of, like, your parents guide you to be who you are, but they're not the ones that force. They give you the tools to become who you are. They're not forcing you in the direction to be who you are. They give you the tools, and then he sees that, because that's what his dad tells him, and he sees that as a real inspirational thing to go back out there as Superman and eventually save the day and whatever, basically. And I love that. It really ties in with the theme of this movie, and it's just well done for this movie. I feel like in other areas, if they did that, where his parents were actually evil and wanted him to take over Earth, it'd be seen as a bit edgy and a bit over the top and wouldn't really work. But in this movie, they make it work. Okay, I feel like I talked about that for quite a while, but it ties into the overall theme, where there's one excellent quote which has been flying all over Twitter at the moment. I literally can't stop seeing it on my feed. But it's a discussion between Lois and Superman, where Superman hands himself into the authorities after the whole message goes everywhere because Lex leaked it, and basically taking him for questioning and whatever. Lois is talking about how she's punk rock and whatever and things like that, and then basically Superman turns around and says maybe kindness is the new punk rock. That's the whole theme of the movie, really, and I love it. But the whole theme of kindness being the new punk rock is the whole theme of the movie, and the way they convey that is really good. Especially, obviously, the end song is basically about punk rock. I can't remember, it's a Iggy Pop song. It just fucking, 'cause I'm a punk rocker, yes I am. I literally have had that in my head for the past week. But that song really works with the movie, because they kind of get across the point that, like, in a way, kindness is the punk rock, because in this world, this comic book world that's made for the movie, kindness is kind of a rare thing in this universe, in a way, which seems a bit dim, but in the movie, it really works to show Superman as this symbol of, like, hope and kindness, and where he's really human after all. But he's like the kindest person out of anyone in this universe. So it really works for me. This is kind of all I can say. One last thing before I end this spoiler moment is I know people talked about Baby Joey, Metamorpho's new son apparently, which he's in the movie for literally like one scene. He's used because Metamorpho is trapped in the same room as Superman in like a pocket dimension that Lex takes Superman in after Lex leaks the footage and basically has a team that's used with the government to trap him and then get like answers out of him for like questioning and whatever for the government and stuff. So he's trapped in a room with Metamorpho, and then Metamorpho's only in there because Lex got his son kidnapped basically, and then Metamorpho has to do what Lex wants him to do and whatever. And he's literally only used for that one scene to make Metamorpho use kryptonite against Superman basically. So the character's worked fine. It has a purpose in the movie and it works. At least they're not advertising the shit out of the character, so that's good. Anyways, that's my review of James Gunn's Superman, and I love this movie. So that's my review for James Gunn's Superman, and I love this movie. It's excellent. I think it's probably my favorite James Gunn movie. It was Super before this. Super was probably my favorite James Gunn movie before this one, but I honestly can't say anymore. I love Superman. This is an excellent movie. It reminds me a lot of what we saw in Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited as the character goes. It's just excellent stuff, and I feel like they portray the character in the best way possible in my eyes, and basically what I perceive the character as. I like the character this way, where he is very light-hearted, he's a bit corny, he does some puns and not great jokes sometimes, but he's very well-spirited, kind-hearted, and hopeful. He's basically a symbol of hope to everyone at the end of the day, and I love that. And hey, if you've seen my post in my Letterboxd review, like, yeah, I gave this a 10 out of 10. I fucking love this movie. Genuinely, it's very similar to the Batman in how much I love it. The Batman where it's very dark and serious, but still a bit comic booky at the same time. But this is the polar opposite of that. So if you had the Batman, this is literally the polar opposite to that movie, and I think it really works. And I know people were saying that they wanted Robert Pattinson with David Corenswet's Superman in like a world's finest situation. I see it now. It could definitely work. I don't know if they will do that, but if they do, fuck, I'm all in.